Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Pucking Mad podcast. Today, I'm joined by Mr. Bristol Pitbulls, I suppose, Richie Hargreaves. Thank you so much for coming on. Would you be able to introduce yourself to people who don't know who you are?
Yeah, for those who don't know, my name's Rich Hargreaves. I've had a long career in British ice hockey. Those who can remember that far back, I've gone through sort of 3 decades of it, starting with the old ENL, BNL, played for teams such as Basingstoke Bison, Cardiff Rage. Trying to think of some other teams back then, so long ago. Then moving on to the EPL, the Isle of Wight, Slough Jets. I'm going to struggle to remember myself here. And then moving on to teams. Oh, Swindon Wildcats, sorry, is another one. And then the Elite League, Cardiff Devils, Basingstoke again, and the infamous London Racers, which everyone seems to have a good time YouTubing or reminding me of and have good fond memories of. So yeah, that's a long career. And those who remember me as a player, I'll just leave you how you want to remember me. That's fine. A bit of a goal scorer, chip in a little bit, and also have a knack of a bit of the rough stuff. So yeah, a bit of everything. And then I went on to coaching in Oxford, my first taste of it. And then moving back to my birthplace, which is Bristol, a place that I grew up and played my juniors here. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to play in the Bulldogs when they were around in the 90s, and decided to start with this project of the Pitbulls. And that's seen me do many roles, even as far as minibus driving. But it's all part and parcel and fun of the fair there. So and then I've been doing this for the last 13, 14 years. So, and then obviously everyone's heard about our moving back to the area, and this is our second season, and with the Pitbulls back in our hometown.
Yeah, that's
It was
really
a bit of a mouthful. I hope you got all that.
No, that's great. That's brilliant. That's it. Yeah. It's important to have it in. You see, you do a better job of it than me. That's great. Yeah. So obviously, like you say, you've been around for a while now. You know the sport inside and out, I would imagine. How would you say it's changed since the early days of the sport?
I think obviously it's not hard to tell that the game has evolved with skill and speed, but that's the nature of everything, really, isn't it? As things develop and evolve, then same with equipment, same with everything else. It's a much, I think personally, it's a much better game. I think it's very exciting. Yes, I do like a little bit of the rough stuff, but I think the games have evolved, and especially off the ice as well, with what's available to the players. Again, going through this myself this year and last year with what we have to do to help these players recover or get to a situation to compete, takes a lot more than what it used to be, where you used to rock up and have a pint after a game and then go home and that was your pre-game and after game and all sorts. So the game's moved forward, and I also think as well, and many people might agree with me and maybe not, but obviously we replicate what we watch. And again, back in the 90s and 80s, we were a very American style, and especially with the Canadians that were coming over, it follows suit. So we kind of go through those eras of copying what's happening and what's out there. And I think definitely back in the sort of 80s, 90s and late 2000s there, we were definitely replicating what we were watching with the Canadians and stuff like that. So that's probably one of the reasons why the game has sort of moved more European now and more skill. Not saying it didn't have skill, don't get me wrong, but it was definitely a lot more crash bang and a few more bench clearances back then.
Yes, I can imagine that. It's definitely interesting the way the game has developed, and particularly as well, I think in the last few years, which is the thing that I find really interesting. There does seem to be more interest in the sport, and that the sport seems to be reacting in the UK and developing its own style, which is really cool. Obviously, you've hung up your skates, quite recently, really, in terms of you've taken on these like different roles in the back office, things like that. Are you missing the playing, or are you quite happy to not be battered on a weekly basis?
I've said this a few times. It's nice to get out of bed and not have to be pushed out of bed. Those aches and pains and bits and bobs. I've had a good innings. I'm 44 years of age. I've held on for a long time there, and I think if I had walked away from the game, I think that might be a different story. But because I'm so heavily involved in it still, I think a lot of people and a lot of players you'll probably interview in the past or in the future will probably say the thing they miss the most is the changing room. And because I'm around that all the time, I'm not missing the game. My skill sets are very limited now compared to how the game's evolved. So contribution on the ice will be different. So I don't miss playing in that respect, and I don't think anyone misses me playing in either. So, but I think if I was not around the game, I think yes, I'd probably miss it a little bit more. But like I said, because I'm so involved in it and everyday running, it's as if I'm just having a week or two off because I'm injured, sort of thing. So, so I'm enjoying the game still. I'm enjoying the other side of the game, and biggest thrill for me is, I've never been when I was a player, it was never really about the money for me. Is how I could continue to challenge myself in roles and way. When I finished as a player, I wanted to do something else. So I became a player coach. When I finished that, I got into running of the team. And so there was constant challenges for me. And that's what I'm finding now is that my enthusiasm for the game is still there. It's just in a different avenue. So running the team and putting those guys out there is a lot of fun for me, and making sure they have everything is that's the next step for me, and I'm enjoying that.
Yeah, that's cool. Obviously, the Pitbulls have jumped through the leagues in the last few years they've been around, really. And how has the management role changed for you? Has it become more involved, or kind of different shift in mentalities, or how's it?
Yeah, obviously now we're back in Bristol. We're this is a new toy in the area, and everyone wants to come down and witness hockey. And last sort of 13, 14 years, it just chipped along and did what you had to do to make your club a better club. And so I've definitely noticed that obviously the last 2 years since being back in Bristol, because the want for the Pitbulls in the community especially is really going strong. And and regardless of how well we're playing this year, people have really bought into ice hockey, which is great. So so it has been challenging, but as you get bigger, more people come on board, experience, volunteers, helpers who make your club run smoother as well as better. I'm very fortunate. I've got lots of ex-players who've been around the game a long time, who've been in clubs and taken ideas from other clubs and putting it into ours to help this model move forward. And so we're in good stead here, and we've got lots of help. And so challenging, yes, but I've got a good bunch of people around me that's making it fun.
Yeah, brilliant. Obviously, when it was founded, 2009, I'm sure there was a great deal of work before that date to get it to that point. But what was the motivation? I suspect I know, with it being a local club, but what was the motivation for you?
I think it was a funny way it came about. I'll touch on that in a minute. But the motivation was, I think, at a point in your life where you got to remember is that it's not like football where you sort of sign multi-year contracts and bits and bobs, and these are one-year deals at a time, and that's not even set in stone, because if you don't fit into a club or you're not achieving or what they want, then you move on quick. So I think I got to a stage in my career where I was living out of a suitcase for the last 5-6 years, and there was no stability for me, and I wanted to come back to Bristol. I was slowly creeping back towards the southwest from some teams, and and I just wanted to be at home, because other things later on in your life is you start thinking is like, what do I do for a career after hockey? What do I want some stability. I don't want to keep being uprooted and move to where I've got to play and go and stuff like that. So I wanted to try and play a little bit more local. And obviously, if Bristol is my hometown, we didn't have anything at the time. And so that led me on to my other idea was, if it hadn't been done before, I would come back and see if I could do it here. And I know the Bulldogs back in the 90s only lasted a season, but it was a good season. Everyone, they had a fantastic year, and everyone really enjoyed the team that was on Frogmore Street. And also I had memories of that too. And being too young, I couldn't play for that. So that was my motivation. Really, was I wanted to try and build something here in the Southwest, and something that I fell in love with, something that gave me so much, was the sport, and I wanted to be able to start doing that here. And I got involved with the junior clubs, and I was doing a couple of hockey camps and stuff like that. And I just approached the rink at the time, and I actually had a bet with the manager. He's unfortunately he's not here today, but he betted me I couldn't do it. So that's how it all started. And he said, "I'll give you the ice time, and I'll bet you can't do it." And obviously, then that's a challenge to me, so I want to prove him wrong. And then we had that first year, and yeah, it was a great year. We kind of had a couple of old heads come back. Myself, my brother, Mike Smith. Players that have had to play in other places because there was no senior team. And then we kind of took a punt on a few guys in the rec that were playing local, and a couple of kids coming up through the junior setup. And yeah, we had a fantastic year that year, and we went on to lose one game. I think we won the league. So, from nothing to that was, that was, something special straight off the bat. And in the meantime, we were doing those things, with building a foundation in the community, and and it was getting recognized very quickly. We were getting asked to do stuff at Christmas, and pack bags in Sainsbury's and Asda. There's bits and bobs that can be fun, and we got noticed by our local newspaper, and they were great in encouraging the sport as well and what we were doing, and they just picked up the story, and we kept winning, and everything fell into place.
Yeah, it's great. It's kind of quite magical, I suppose, in a way. It's interesting that you mentioned about the youngsters that you managed to pick up, and something that seemed to strike me when I've researched it is that it seems bizarre that there wasn't a team before. Obviously, like one season in the '90s. It's amazing that there seemed to be like a youth system in place in Bristol long before there was really any ice hockey in itself, which is quite bizarre. I mean, was it quite useful having that kind of like the grassroots, I suppose, setups?
Yeah. I mean, we're in a situation at the moment with the Pitbulls, is we're looking to go down the route of starting some kind of junior development, because we have nothing here at the moment. So, but back then, again, the junior club was mainly run by parents. So, you're helping, you're there supporting your child, and getting involved, not necessarily because you want to, it's sometimes because you have to keep a club going. But, my parents were the same. They were heavily involved, along with others. But the junior club was continued to play out the rink regardless of no senior team. So, by the time we came back in 2009, there was a lifeline there, which was great for us, because, and we already had a little bit of a relationship, because when I was coming back in the summers, when finishing my contract, I was helping coach the kids and juniors, and they used to come and watch me when I was playing in the Elite League in Cardiff, because that was our closest rink to them. So there was a relationship already there. And they were aware of my presence or what I was doing away from Bristol. So I was fortunate that we didn't have to come back and start from scratch with that as well when I came back in 2009. So and again, when we hit the roads a couple of years later, again, I tried to keep a core of the youngsters and the British and the Bristol kids together. So, but unfortunately, when you have no hub, it ends up dispersing, or people, because the commitment with ice hockey, as you probably know, is it's not like you like my daughter plays for Bristol Rovers Academy down here, and she's got a football game every other road sort of thing, because there's a football field. With ice hockey, our closest rink's 45 minutes, and then if you want to go to Invicta, that's a 4-hour bus drive. So that's a lot of commitment for people, especially parents that have kids. So we were once the rink went, then naturally the juniors were going to start dispersing. So some kept going, some didn't, but that's the nature. So we were lucky to keep a group of the older kids that were coming out at the time to get into the Pitbulls, and they stayed around for a good sort of 6, 7, 8 years until their priorities changed as well, and then we were recruiting from Swindon and Cardiff or wherever was coming to the area. So yeah, it was pretty tough, but luckily, like I said, the juniors were still going by the time we came back, so there was a little starting point for us.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you raised with the rink scenario. Quite a tragic and difficult situation, I can imagine, and it's something that I think is going to be happening quite a lot. You know, there's going to be a theme of this with a lot of the rinks in the UK really needing a lot of redevelopment and things like that. How did you get through that time? Because I can imagine the uprooting and all the uncertainty of it. Like, how did you get through it? It was like hell on earth, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it was tough, and again, Frogmore Street, it was nothing new to us. With the lease being renewed every 5 years, so we were kind of like, yeah, it's just going to get renewed. Do you know what I mean? And we're going to carry on as normal, But then the doors just didn't open, and we was like a bit dumbfounded, really. That didn't go to plan, sort of thing, And it was tough for us because at that point we were just going into our third season. We had already had a second team going, so we had NIHL 1, NIHL 2. We were having challenge matches with women's games in there with the intention of bringing women's hockey back to Bristol as well. And we had just got in control, or we just built a very strong relationship where I was going to be in control of the junior setup. So we had gone from 18 guys the first season to this huge club or organization in a space of 2 seasons, and then all of a sudden we had this situation where the rink wasn't going to open. Oh, we also had a couple of rec teams as well, the Mad Dogs. So that was a hard day actually, because we had to call a meeting, and and there's a lot of people looking at you and hoping that you could figure this out. But in the end, we had to. It was a lot of background stuff, council meetings, and as you can imagine, radio interviews and bits and bobs like that. But we knew that, well, I personally felt, and a few other guys that were sticking around to help, we had to stay in that kind of limelight. We had to keep being that pest and being in the papers. And so we decided to go back to a skeleton, and keep one team going. We decided in an NIHL 2 because, one, we could pay to play, and so we could pay our own way. And 2, it was less demanding with a schedule, because we knew at that point as well, ice time would be hard to get hold of, because a lot of clubs in the area do have juniors, senior teams, rec teams. So we had to think smart at how we did it. It had its challenges. We were like Lassie for about 7 or 8 years, you know what I mean, trying to find a way home, sort of thing. And we had stops in like Birmingham, which I didn't even know they had a rink at that time, So we were training there. We were training in Swindon, and we played a few games in Swindon. And before we kind of got a little bit of stability in Oxford, which we were very grateful to. I remember actually we played a game in Solihull against London Raiders. So we were really jotted. We were like an all-star team traveling to play teams, but so I'm very, very grateful to all those rinks that helped us continue to survive to get to this point today. So, but yeah, it had its challenges. I think we had a good bunch of guys actually, because again, we've got touching back on this changing room, walking away from the game. I felt if it became a chore, then I think I would stop enjoying it a long time ago. But because these guys made it fun regardless of our situation, I think that it kind of the time flies. Do you see what I mean? And because you're just enjoying what you're doing, and the bunch of guys, and that's what happened in the end, And before you know it, we're 10 years down the line. So yeah, it was a lot. It was definitely something I could look back and be very proud of, and say, well, I don't think there's many clubs or any clubs in the world that have gone on a 10-year spree and kept a team from outside of their own home city. And one of those plus points was we actually went on to win a league and a playoff. So and we were only training every other week, so it just shows the character that we had and the determination, and yeah, so that's going to be one of my fondest memories is that era
Yeah.
of when we went through with Bristol Hockey. So
Yeah, that's quite. It gives the club, gives the team character as well, I suppose, which is quite
yeah,
fun.
definitely.
Yeah,
And well, the best thing was there was two funny sides to it. First of all, I was joking with the IHA that I'd never have to play an away game again because we've already done 10 years of them,
yeah,
so we should be and and then no one, it didn't really matter who had, because some teams always go, oh, you travel to a rink, they got the home advantage. Well, we never had that, so we were winning all these games on the road. So naturally I thought we'd be very good when we came into Bristol being on the road again. So
yeah.
yeah, but yeah, it is what it is. So
No,
but
yeah, it's true. It's true. Let's talk about the obviously the season with the National League. Obviously, first season in the league. What's your take on it? How do you feel it's gone? Like as a first season stepping up,
yeah, I mean, we had to sit back in the summer and think of how we wanted to move forward. The rink was it's capable of holding the National League. We had done very well the season before, with people buying in and really enjoying the product that we were putting out there, and ice hockey in general. And so the gamble we took with moving up a league, I think we wanted to give, we want people were liking ice hockey, and obviously moving up a division means more games, so, and a higher level, and I think again we wanted to try to bridge those gaps with having Swindon as a local team. That will, that's great, and then obviously having Cardiff on our doorstep too, and being able to offer us a pathway to players moving up into the elite. I felt it was a good move for us, and having a strong base down here in the southwest, not just talking about Bristol, but having Cardiff one way and Swindon the other, all at that level, that's only going to build for better players in the future, and so on. So it was a bit of a challenge because first of all, where are you going to get these players from? And we don't have a junior setup, so we couldn't really rely on kids coming out of our development. So we had to go out and find players. This is one of the reasons why we decided to take the opportunity to build young now, because also, we don't want to keep chopping and changing and bringing players in year on year out. We need to have a foundation. We need to have players that we want to look at keeping for the next 6, 7, 8 years or something like that. So this was a perfect opportunity for us because we're new. We need to build. So we decided to go young. We've gone and got some players that were probably completely off the radar with the National League teams, and again, it's an opportunity for them, to prove themselves they can play at this level. I've enjoyed. It's had its moments this year. It's a learning curve for me, and our coach. He's probably a bit thinner on the head now, but but it's enjoyable. We want to try and give the best we can, and at the highest level we can here. So being young comes without those games sometimes that you probably could do with a little bit of leadership or experience to help you in some of those tighter games. But it's a learning curve for us. So hopefully now we're coming to the end of this year, we have proven that we can compete as well as show that what we can do on and off the ice here in Bristol. And we're hoping it's the foundation or the start of something good here, and hopefully players will want to come to Bristol because, like I said, we have those pathways as well as taking care of the boys, and hopefully they can learn some hockey here and help us be a successful club for the future.
Great, yeah. I suppose it's a snowball effect, isn't it? You have a good season where, okay, like maybe I think there's definitely been some games where you should have probably got a result of some description out of it, but I think it's abundantly obvious that Bristol can compete with most teams. I think there's been a lot of unlucky, and like you said, it's that depth in team that seems, which is really quite amazing. I can imagine as a first season.
Hockey's a funny sport because it's all about momentum. And, a lot of these results, because Jamie sits there and I sit there with him and we analyze it, we're like, we had a fantastic game against Leeds last weekend, and we were 3-3 going into the third, I think. I can't remember. I might be wrong now. But it's just, that's where they're experiencing key moments, because people will look at scores and go 8-3 and they got blown out the water or whatever. But reality is, no, they scored 2 goals in 50 seconds or 2 minutes or something, and then all of a sudden we pull the goalie to try and and then the goals go. So, and a lot of that's happened this year where we've competed every single game. There's not one person. I think our crowds, who we continue to do very well with, touch wood, but they turn up and they can see our compete level, and they can see how we're in it in the games all the time. And again, it's just that one power play we could have done better on, or that, or let a short-handed goal, or a moment of a lapse or madness where we've put our guard down and it's cost us. So we're there. We just need to finally tune it a little bit more so we don't let these goals in and stuff. But that's why we're happy with where we're at with this team, and everyone knew this year was going to be a challenge. But we've got to start somewhere, and so I think overall, we'd probably like a few more wins on underneath us, but to finish a season is a success, full stop. In our first National League, so we still got a few games to go. We're still pushing for a playoff, so hopefully it'll make the league exciting. But yeah, it's like you said, it's a tough one, because being a player as well, I would knew kind of what to do at that moment, where even if it was just to get under someone's skin to change the momentum or whatever. So it's a bit of a pill to swallow, but the boys are disappointed, which makes them hungrier, and that shows in the way they play the game after or the next day and stuff like that. So we've been a bit unlucky with some injuries as well. So, but every team struggles with that, and so that's we're happy in general. We know where we need to improve. We're looking at that already, and but overall, we're happy where we're at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that when you look at the last few games, having Leeds as a double header is it's not a fun one for anyone in the league, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
To come out of it competitively is uncertain is a good thing. That's great. I think one final question here, really, which I think it's a difficult one to answer at this point of the season, because I imagine that you're focused mainly on, like you say, you're still in for the playoffs and and things like that. But what about next season? Have you got targets in place? Have you got have you got an eye on that, or are you just focused on this season?
Yeah, well, a bit of both, really. Our focus at the moment is playoffs. I think that's what we generally set out to achieve this year. Is if we make it into the playoffs, I think that's a great start. Next year again, you just want to build off that. So, if it's not playoffs this year, then definitely it has to be playoffs next year. Areas to improve. Myself and Jamie have been looking into areas that we feel that we need to be a little bit deeper. And I think you can only beat goals or achieve goals once you have a target. So we need to be able to get to a situation where we can beat it next year. And and like I said, the playoffs is something that we're looking at this year, if achievable. If not, then it's definitely next year. And obviously competing more in more games and winning more games, and seeing it's so tough, isn't it? Hockey, we just want to compete each night, and hopefully the results will take care of themselves. But it's a tough question to ask, because every person or every owner or coach will say, "We'll win every night." So win leagues, win titles, win everything. So I think we're realistic, and so we'll take those strides rather than those little steps. rather than those big sort of leaps of faith there, and we'll see what happens. But hopefully, if not this year playoffs, then definitely mid-table or maybe even above.
Yeah,
depends what becomes available to us in the summer. Do you know what I mean? We might be in a situation where recruitment's tough, or we might be in a situation where we've managed to recruit very, very well, and sky's the limits for us then, isn't it?
Well, definitely. I mean, I can imagine that Bristol is now probably a far more attractive team to players, having had this season where you've competed and you've had a season in and things like that. So I can imagine that touch wood. Yeah, I don't want to ruin it by saying that recruitment might be a little bit less of a slog, I suppose. But,
I think, I mean, it's a smaller pool of players because COVID didn't. I mean, I don't know if you've touched on it before, but COVID really didn't help the player pool. And people were concerned that the product would be watered down this year. I mean, to us, we're a fun team to watch. We might not win every night, but we're definitely a fun team to watch. And do I think the product was watered down? No, not really. I think it's given opportunities to players that might not have got a sniff or a look in before, and like the rest is down to them. But COVID was a tough one because when you have all that time away from hockey, you start investing into other things, or your kids start asking more of you, or even the wife gets used to you being at home, and then you just begin to not see as hockey as part of your weekend schedule, and then people get move on. So I know that's been a case for a lot of people, myself included. When I came out of that, I was like, well, actually, do I actually miss playing? But I'm just kind of coached back into playing as the situation of coming back to Bristol. But so it's a tough one. So I think player recruitment will be tough, and I think that's not just us in general. I think that's every team is going to struggle with recruiting. I know that the league are looking at other areas to improve the level, maybe some more overseas players, maybe not, to help with that. But yeah, it's a tough one, and again, because ice hockey isn't as common as football and rugby, there's you've got to try and get these players from somewhere, if not England, then abroad or up north or Scotland or wherever it is. So so best of luck to all the teams, and hopefully we can be a strong and competitive team as we are, level as we are this year, next, and moving forward.
Yeah, I hope so. Rich, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast, mate. I really appreciate your time. So honestly, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Got me out of doing some chores, so I'm happy with that. I've got to go and put a goal. Got to go and put a goal net together now for the little one. So
good luck with that. And if you ever need to get out of any more, give me a shout. Come back on.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah.
Cheers,
you'll be on speed dial. Yeah.